Are you ready to embark on a journey of success? To discover your true potential in the untold stories of careers in life sciences? Welcome to PATHFINDER by the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. With your host, Tommy Soares, discover the untold stories of industry scientists and unveil the secrets to excelling in your career. Thank you for joining us once again, and remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Welcome, everybody. My name is Tommy Soares. I'm the Director of Scientific Strategy and Relations for the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. And today I am back at 16 Tech Innovation District in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I'm talking to Jay Shah, who is the CEO and co-founder of Neurava, a company he co-founded while in graduate school. He holds a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering from the University of Texas at Austin and a PhD in electrical engineering from Purdue University, where he was a graduate researcher and at the Center for Implantable Devices under Dr. Pedro Irasoki. He has also worked at Neurava, a medical device company that creates vagus nerve stimulators for treating epilepsy. Welcome, Jay. Thank you so much for coming on Pathfinder today and talking to me, telling me everything about your story and what you guys are doing at Neurava today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tommy, for the invite. Yeah, looking forward to chatting with you. Thanks for that fantastic intro.
Absolutely. You know, it's so cool to have even, let's say, innovation that was prominent from Purdue land at 16 Tech. And I've been getting to know a few of the entrepreneurs down at 16 Tech. And I got to tell you, it's pretty exciting
Mhm.
community that you have down there. It
Yep.
seems like everybody's very open, very much helping each other out. It's like a huge co-working environment, and it's so good to be able to talk to you today and hear a little bit about your story. So I don't know where do you want to start? If you want to take us back to your your education or your preparation, and maybe you can take us through that journey and how you decided to form this startup company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, happy to give you a little insights on kind of my journey to date. So, growing up, I've always been interested in business, as well as sort of in the medical field, right? Kind of from different aspects. Growing up when we were younger, I'd get lessons from my dad about this is the stock market, this is what happens. You got to uh sell high and buy low, right? That's how you make money. That's how you have a viable business. And we'd have conversations on the table about different things that are going on in the stock market and business, how to be, financially responsible, but also try to grow a business. And it's funny, I actually have some business entrepreneurial experience in my kind of family as well. My grandfather used to own a toothbrush factory back in India. So kind of some stuff in the family, and then my other grandfather on my dad's side had a pacemaker, and so ever since then I've been interested in medical devices, stimulation therapies, implantable devices, wearable devices. So that led me to when I went to UT to study biomedical engineering. While I was there, I was trying to figure out what within BME was interesting, whether it be some more cellular tissue engineering side, but taking a couple of courses in electrical engineering really sort of I was really interested by some of those courses in electrical engineering, developing hardware, working with firmware, things like that, and so writing code. So that really kind of pushed me in the journey of sort of medical devices, but even more kind of electronic type medical devices. So I interned also at Cyberonics, which is now known as LivaNova, and that was actually my first sort of experience within epilepsy and within a sort of implantable device space. So Cyberonics back then, or LivaNova now, makes an implantable stimulator to to treat epilepsy, to try to reduce severity and frequency of seizures. And so it was actually through there, and my boss there was actually my boss there was Pedro's first grad student. So through him, I actually got connected to Pedro, really was interested by what the lab was doing in epilepsy, but also other disease spaces. And so I applied to Purdue, got in with Pedro, and came to Purdue. It was a little bit of a change going from Austin to West Lafayette, but as one of my mentors back in grad or undergrad told me was, hey, it's great to go to Purdue because in the winter the most fun you can have is your research because it's so cold out there. And so I grew up out in Texas, so I was a little unsure what I was getting my hands into coming to Indiana, but yeah, then came to Purdue back in 2016, started my PhD there with Pedro. It was fantastic. Did a lot of exciting work, both on all the way from technology development all the way to then taking that technology, painting it and testing it on animals. So it was really cool to build something over into the bench, test it out, put it into a device, and then go out and actually implant it or test it on an animal, which was fantastic. Some of my research was on glaucoma and using a stimulation device to uh, um, try to lower intraocular pressure in glaucoma patients. So did some really fascinating work on that. But another area of our lab was in epilepsy. And so the lab had discovered a potential mechanism of action behind SUDEP, or what's called sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. So to kind of put some things into perspective, there's about 3.5 million Americans with epilepsy and about 65 million people globally that suffer from epilepsy. Um, these patients are at risk for something called SUDEP, which is sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. So what happens is these patients normally healthy, right? But they'll have a seizure in most cases, and from there, that will cause them to suddenly die. There's been a lot of fascinating research over the last decade or so about what is going on in these events. So we figured out that, okay, you'll have a seizure in most of these cases, but typically you'll have a cardiorespiratory collapse. And my co-founder, who was also my lab mate at the time, Vivek Ganesh, we decided that, hey, there's nothing really out on the market for these patients, right? They're suffering. It's still a large unmet need. And from there, that's what led us to form Neurava. So he and I, we're still with the company, working in on the day in and day out of it, leading the company. And it's been an exciting journey since then. So started it while we were both in grad school. I graduated with my PhD in 2021 and have been full-time with the company since then. And he shortly graduated after that and joined full-time as well. So it's been an exciting journey so far, balancing a company, a startup, as well as graduate, research was challenging at times, but it was a rewarding experience for sure.
That's awesome. And it sounds like it must have been quite an adventure. What struck me about your story, which you glanced over it fairly quickly, was your grandfather's pacemaker, and that giving you, maybe like an initial window into
Mhm.
implantables, eh? It was that must have been like, because I remember also pacemakers were fascinating. What do you mean pacemakers? Like how,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
that whole stimulatory electrical stimulation and like that to start to really understand how mechanical we really are and how we're able to do that. That must have been quite a realization as you discovered this electrical engineering aspect
Mhm.
of these, eh? So was other than the weather, was the environment in Austin very different than at Purdue? Was there a difference that you could say it was palpable?
Yeah, so I think it was interesting, to make that comparison. I've even thought about this a couple of times, and it's a little bit hard to make that, I guess, distinction. Sometimes, I guess, for me personally, from just the overall environment. Obviously, there's differences from the city, but when I was an undergrad, it was okay. I knew that I wanted to go to grad school. My focus was on, um, getting my degree, studying, making good grades, making sure I learn all the material and doing well to exceed in sort of that route. Obviously, had internships and research and things like that, but that was sort of the main driver. Whereas when I came to Purdue, it was, hey, we're working on some fascinating stuff. I got to now, I'm interested now about thinking what's next, right? What's my journey after grad school? And entrepreneurship had always been fascinating to me. So when I was at Purdue, it was okay, yeah, we're doing some fascinating research. I was also interested in entrepreneurship. The Purdue Foundry, well, I guess back then it was called Purdue Foundry. I think now
Yes.
they've gone through some name changes, Purdue Innovates, but
Yes.
they were a great resource for us when we were starting out. And so, yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that humble beginnings of, a pacemaker, and that's sort of what got me interested in medical devices, where then I'm doing research on other types of implantable devices. And now, even outside of implantables, Neurava, we're developing wearable technology. So it's cool to kind of see both sides of that in the realm of medical devices.
Absolutely. And what a revolution it will be with wearables coming up. I think it's fascinating for me to talk to you because essentially the wearables market, the wearables research arena is just starting to open up quite a bit. Tell us a little bit what's what's the constraint, what has been the constraint in the wearables that is starting to really change the way that industry and even companies such as you guys are starting to look at this.
Yeah, I think it's, multifaceted. One of the biggest things I think is developing an implantable device is great for its purposes for specific reasons, but you're now going in doing surgery, implanting somebody. There's risks involved with that. Patients themselves, if they don't need to go in through a high risk.
Mm.
So there's a lot of push now to do a lot more wearables, whether that be through just monitoring and diagnostic, which has typically been more of a wearable solution. But I know there's also some fascinating work on trying to do a lot of stimulation and things like that, also from a wearable technology as
Oh,
well, right? The
okay.
more that we can reduce that sort of burden of having a surgery, the costs associated with that, the risk and complication. If we can work to a more of a wearable solution, that might improve patient adoption, that might improve compliance. It might be easier to, have somebody put on the technology or a wearable space. And there's been a huge, as you mentioned, right, there has been a huge sort of growth in the wearable spaces, right? We're looking at things from just regular biometric tracking for athletes. There's
Mhm.
things for medical devices. You know, there's a lot of push into this. And I think as we continue to um, grow in this space and in this industry, we'll continue to see more and more novel ways to do a lot of this monitoring and tracking that wearables can do, as well as
I
stimulation.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by this topic really because it's an area that I would love to learn more about and be able to connect even more people
Mhm.
that are working in this because if we can, if you can, please, Jay, you being the expert, when we say wearables, can we define wearables? Can we give a few examples of what are we talking about as wearables?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd consider myself an expert in that, but when we're thinking about wearables from medical space, right? You can look at a variety of different types of devices. So there's continuous glucose monitors, developed that these are basically patches that go on the body that are monitoring glucose levels in diabetes patients.
Mm,
There are things like Holter monitors, and we've been able to miniaturize those. They're patches and devices that go on to monitor your ECG or your cardiac rhythm, your cardiac activity, and see how your heart is doing. So a lot of patients that might have that are high risk for arrhythmias or congestive heart failure, things like that, right? We can put these devices on patients like that. What we're doing is developing wearables for epilepsy patients. So we're looking at seizures and trying to be able to detect for convulsive seizures, but also the cardiac and respiratory elements. So we have a two-part system, a two-part wearable system that monitors not only seizures, but also the cardiac and respiratory elements. Because cardiac and respiratory is as I mentioned, right, is critical to being able to determine for when SUDEP might be occurring. So being able to monitor for that is critical for being able to mitigate the risk of SUDEP.
Yeah, unreal. That's really fascinating. So if you were to say the access to the data that we
Mhm.
can have now versus, even 5 years ago for
Mhm.
wearable devices. Tell us a little bit how this revolution, I don't even want to call it an evolution, I want to call it revolution because data has exploded
Mhm.
but the availability of cloud-based, systems that allows us to really store and manage large amounts of data uh,
Mhm.
has opened us up to be able to do a lot more in the wearable space. Tell us a little bit about that revolution, if you can.
Yeah, back in the day, if you wanted any sort of metric or information, any sort of health information, you had to go right to the hospital. You had to go to a physician. You'd have to do a lot of things in clinic. But, similarly, as we've seen with epilepsy, not everything is going to happen when you're in the hospital, right?
Mm,
Having a more round the clock type of monitoring that can provide a lot more insights, especially to different points in our day, right? If we're having a high stress type of environment, how would our heart react, right? So having understanding those different types of environments, um, it was harder to do that back in the day now. But with wearables, with these cloud-based devices that can now collect this data, instantly transfer them up to the cloud, we can get a lot more routine and holistic data now on a person. So not only are you looking now at that one signal, you're looking at multimodal signals. So we can now start to see and both from a research perspective and as a clinical perspective of treating that specific subject or patient, we can now get a lot more insights on what else is going on with these subjects. So um, we can understand better a person's holistic health, understanding at different times of the day, understanding different signals and how they all come together. So there's still a lot of work in the wearable space, a lot more miniaturization, a lot more
yeah,
comfort, things like that still need to come into play. But, as an industry as a whole, we're moving in that direction to try to make these things as minimal, as um, simple and to incorporate into our daily lives as possible.
yeah. I love the interconnected aspect of it, right?
Mhm.
Is being able to monitor the patient from remote distance away because we don't know where they're coming. So is it the patient or is it the doctor or is it both that are interested in Neurava's technology?
It would be both. From us speaking perspective, right? For our devices, right? We're monitoring all of this information in when we detect a seizure or a cardiac or respiratory dysfunction, we'll send an alert out to the caregiver and to the subject themselves or the patient.
Mm.
I keep saying subject. Sorry, we have an ongoing clinical study right now, so my frame of mind is still
No
subject,
problem.
but
No
but but
problem.
but patient. So the patient and their families, they're interested in those immediate emergency situations. What's
Yes.
going on, what's happening, how can we alleviate the situation in that time frame. But now, armed with this data that we're capturing, we can now provide physicians a better understanding and a more holistic representation of what their seizure profile is like, what their epilepsy is like, so that they have now more evidence to actually better treat these subjects. Whether it's, okay, I know that they're having a cardiac dysfunction, so I want to make sure I'm targeting that as well.
Yeah.
Or, hey, this person is having these really high risk seizures. We should be a little bit more aggressive in our treatment plan.
Right.
That we're capturing that can help both the patient and the physician in this patient's epilepsy journey.
And I guess the doctors are able to maybe better monitor before the patient gets to this sudden death severity of the situation.
Yep.
Um, it's incredible. And so you are, I don't know if you could tell us much about the clinical trial, but it's exciting to hear that Neurava is conducting clinical trials. Can you tell us anything about, where is the trial being conducted, and a little bit about that study?
Yeah, so let me take a one step back. So we have a two-part wearable system. Um, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we completed a study with one part of our wearable system. This was on 30 epilepsy patients. This is a usability study,
Mhm.
right? So we put them on 30 epilepsy patients, IRB approved study, collected some good data, got some really strong results out of that, right? We had good usability scores. Our data that came in was really good. So that was really exciting. And then now what this ongoing clinical study is, it's a full system. So it's both of our wearables in conjunction, collecting data simultaneously. We've completed a few subjects out of that. Can't go into a whole lot of details just yet, but yeah, the data coming in on this so far has been phenomenal. We've really liked the data that we're seeing coming in. It proves our study, right? These are still preliminary results, but yeah, things have been going well on that, and we're looking now to continue on with that study and then wrap up hopefully later this year.
So exciting. So exciting. I mean, that's incredible. And is it in your plan to, what does it look like in the plan once a study is completed? Let's say everything goes well and you have good evidence. How do you guys plan to continue to grow? And how, again, like, I'm thinking, if there are patients out there, or if there are doctors out there that are listening that might be interested, what's the plan next once you have proof of concept?
Yeah. So once we complete this study, I guess while the study's going on, we're actually working right now on all the regulatory work that needs to go in before we can submit to the FDA. So we're working on doing all of that, getting all the manufacturing
Mm.
in place, proper manufacturing with all the SOPs, getting doing the safety and efficacy testing, so making sure the device is safe, it passes all the requirements that the FDA wants, and then from there we'll submit to the FDA. And once we get the approvals from the FDA, we'll work to start getting these getting the devices into hands of patients and physicians.
Nice, nice, fantastic. Is there an advantage to being at 16 Tech Innovation District?
Yeah, I really like being at 16 Tech. Beforehand we were up in had an office space in West Lafayette, but I like that a lot of events happen in Indianapolis, right, as sort of the main center within the state of Indiana. So it's been great to connect, meet a lot of connections, meet potential investors here. It's a lot easier to set up meetings with current investors as well as potential investors. The environment here at 16 Tech has been great. A lot of friendly people, always willing to help, and how we can help each other grow. So I'm really, excited and happy to be a part of the 16 Tech community.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear. And I got to tell you, it's an awesome community. It seems like there are so many open entrepreneurs that are willing to roll up the sleeves and help each other out. And it seems like a great, I've said it before, like a co-working space,
Mhm.
per
Yep.
se. It's wonderful also to see this journey of creating a startup, which I know is not a simple feat.
Mhm.
You were a biomedical engineer. you were helped by the foundry and maybe the expertise there. What has been the biggest challenge, and what has been the best part about starting your own company?
Yeah. So, obviously this is the first time doing, and, being a first time entrepreneur, first time having a startup. So it was early on, it was, what do we do? How do we do this? Things like that, right? So it was a lot of figuring out a lot of things. And that's where the foundry came in to be really helpful, especially in our early days of guiding us, providing us with, you know, you need to do this, you need to form a company, this is how you can form an LLC, you can have, this is how you know need to think about your patents, make sure you have that under the belt. So it was great to kind of get some of their guidance earlier on. And so, but to me, one of the most rewarding aspects of this is going out and taking an idea. So you had an idea, testing out this idea and actually validating it. So it was awesome to be able to say, okay, we have an idea. This is or sorry, even before then, taking, okay, this is an unmet need in this space. Then taking that, okay, we now have an idea, going out, validating that idea, talking to people, saying, okay, this is what we're proposing. Yes, no, what are your feedback? Making pivots along the way. Then from there, going out, taking this idea and actually building something concrete. We're a wearable device, so it's not just software, there's hardware, there's firmware, all of this kind of needs to come together. So then going out and building that up. And now to where we're at is actually testing this out on patients and seeing the value that we can create has been fantastic. And eventually now, then getting that product now into the hands of patients and physicians to actually create a real change in society. That to me has been the most sort of rewarding part of this journey of going all the way out of, figuring out what's a need, what's a problem, going out, developing a solution, all the way out to now developing that solution and putting it out into society, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, that's sounds so rewarding, so fulfilling too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Um, I'm sure there are difficult days and there are easier days. What do you do to make sure that those difficult days don't get you down and don't
Yep.
derail you?
Yeah. So couple points on that. So one is, yeah, with startups, you have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So when you're working through the lowest of lows and even the highest of highs, it's realizing your peaks and valleys. We need to kind of remember the midpoint. Um, the the One of the things I think that has been really helpful is reminding us of our mission and our value. And so whenever we have some of these days, it's okay, when we think about who we're doing it for, right? These patients, what they're going through in their lives. So it's always beneficial for us when we actually talk to patients about what their struggles are with and how, our product can help them. And so keeping that sort of goal in mind has been very, very rewarding and helps us lift us off one of those lowest of lows. Like, for example, in this study, we had a patient, basically talk about how awesome our product was. And it was, just reading that one sentence of saying how awesome our product was, how much benefit that they can have with this product was basically rewarding of in itself. And it's also just, as an entrepreneur, the second point is just perseverance, right? With an entrepreneur, you're always learning. You have to be willing to learn, willing to adapt, and just understand that, got to put one foot in front of the other each day. And so just think about baby steps. How can you continue to solve the problems that you're currently facing and continue on with the vision in mind?
Yeah, and I agree so much with what you're saying. It resonates so much with me. I've also heard that to be an entrepreneur, you have to be okay with being uncomfortable almost all the time. That you're
Mm-hmm.
doing step by step, but you don't know if the next step is a precipice or not, because tomorrow might be a different thing, a different set of
Yep.
problems. Um, and keeping your heart at bay so that you keep the courage to
Yep.
muster through that uncertainty? Is it the uncertainty that really, like, I think derails people, right? They
Yeah.
can't take that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the point of being in a startup, in the startup space, being an entrepreneur is you're innovating, you're pushing the bounds of what's currently known. That in of itself is of not knowing what is going to happen can be uncomfortable. And that's just part of the business, right? That's just part of the beast. And so it's being able to live with that. But that's the value that you're bringing to this space, to this industry, is you're innovating, you're bringing in new change, and how that can help society as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's so, again, so rewarding, such a valuable thing to be doing, right? To be giving
Mhm.
in such a way. Tell me, Neurava is making good progress. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about the team that you've put together in Neurava, and
Yeah.
what are the different roles that go into forming a good, effective team with a startup?
Yeah. So a little bit about our team. We have, myself and my co-founder Vivek. He and I are full-time. We also have another one of our lab mates, former lab mates, who works part-time with us, and it's been a very, we have a very small team. Whenever we need expertise outside of our team, we'll contract out, do some consulting work, bring in folks with that experience. But we have, surrounded ourselves with a lot of great mentors, our board, advisors that have provided us a lot of expertise in areas that we don't necessarily have. So it's building an effective team. It's first off finding people that you get along with, that you can have a good working relationship with. It's you might disagree on certain things, but that's okay, right? We're going to disagree on a few things. How do we now come to a consensus, move forward, and continue to grow? Having a team that has a shared vision is very critical.
Mhm.
So with our team, we have a shared vision of what we want to do, how we're trying to get there, and so that's the journey, right? And then also building an effective team, it's important to know what are the strengths and weaknesses of your team,
Yeah.
and using your strengths to continue to grow, and finding out, okay, if we're lacking in a certain area, who can we bring in, or who can help us uh, provide us with that guidance or experience that can help us take us to the next level. Because we have expertise in our own areas, but it's not like we know everything. And so being willing to say, okay, I need to know X. I need to bring in somebody who has expertise in X. So yeah.
I, Again, that resonates a lot with me, because many times in this program, the lesson is not how am I going to resolve the problem, but who's going to help me resolve the problem. It's a question that
Absolutely.
we should be always asking, because there's somebody always out there that has
Mhm.
had this problem before. You're not the first
Yep.
one on the block. This is great. I think because you are in the bleeding edge of technology, and I'll say that bleeding leading edge, because I know how much it takes, and you guys are blood, sweat, and tears into trying to make it work. It's so exciting, though,
Mhm.
to be part of that leading edge. That is almost like that precipice that we were talking about before.
Yep.
Yeah, the work that you had done during your PhD, it might have prepared you somewhat for the responsibility of having the work ethic. But
Mhm.
the other thing that I've learned, from talking to entrepreneurs like you, is that many times it takes just the small steps,
Mhm.
the like, the if you gotta call 100 doctors, you gotta call 100 doctors, and
Mhm.
you did six today. You needed to call 100. uh
Yeah.
So, it's the small steps sometimes that I think are so difficult for us to accomplish or to complete because there's so
Mhm.
many distractions in our lives that
Yeah.
eat away at our time. But how do you maintain focus? And I say that coming back to that PhD as a work ethic that you
Mhm.
probably learned and that you probably instilled in yourself, especially in Pedro's lab, who I know
Mhm.
was actually a great mentor from both the entrepreneurial side as well as the
Mhm.
scientific side. But
Yeah.
how do you maintain? How do you stay focused?
Yeah. Yeah. Pedro was a great mentor. But yeah, thinking about, work ethic and just staying focused when you have all these different things. So as you mentioned, right, there's all these different problems, things like that you have to solve. And so it's breaking these down. You know what your end goal is, and break that end goal into smaller sub steps,
Yeah.
right? In bite size, chewable things that you can accomplish. And when you start to try to structure your tasks and your trying to solve these problems in that manner, it becomes a little bit easier to, okay, I don't need to solve everything, right? I just need to solve 5% of this in these next week. So let me focus on that, get that done. From there, then we can continue on and start the journey. So it's, being in a startup, being an entrepreneur, it's you need to have it's being able to kind of flip the switch between, okay, what's the vision? What's the future going to look like? But also being able to then flip back into, okay, what's the current problem? How do I get there? What do I solve these current things to be able to eventually reach that overall vision at the end?
Yeah, yeah. And does that keep you it keeps you animated? Does that keep you interested having that vision at the end?
Yeah, and so that's kind of, something that, you learn from the PhD, right? It's okay, this is what the project I'm working on, this is what my dissertation is on. Before I can get to that point, I have to do all these other little things.
Yeah.
And so it's that I think kind of set up a good sort of life experience for me of being able to say, okay, being able to have the end in mind, but also understanding what steps I need to take right now. And so yeah, some days it's difficult to be able to balance all of that, but it's just part of the journey. It's exciting to being able to say, okay, this is the vision we're setting out. This is what the future is going to look like.
Yeah.
And then now working on those little steps to be able to achieve that as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think, it's awesome to hear you speak with great conviction, and it shows that you've actually have been walking the walk and talking the talk. It's, one thing to ask also about partnerships. Are you guys also looking for particular partners, or maybe, I don't know at what point in time, but if somebody wanted to partner with you because they wanted to run your technology in their clinic, or they wanted to, work with you on the data side, or
Mhm.
there's so many aspects, so many facets that somebody might say, hey, this is a really interesting company that you're forming here, especially in the epilepsy side of things, right? And there,
Mhm.
it's so specialized, it's so unique. So partnerships, are you guys doing some of those? And how do people reach out? How do people get in touch with you guys to talk about that?
Yeah, partnerships are great, right? You're working together on a shared vision, on a shared goal, helping each other out to achieve the results. Um, so yeah, we're always looking for more partnerships. We have a lot of great partners already, both on the clinical side, on the technical side,
Mhm.
on manufacturing and labs and things like that. So we have some great partners already within us, but we'll as we continue to grow and scale, we'll need to continue more partners, right? There's only so many things that we can do internally as a team. And so yeah, we're always looking for partners. Feel free to reach out to me, set up send me an email or something like that, and we can see what that might look like.
Fantastic. Jay, are there any questions that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Um, No, I don't think so. I think it's been great talking about my journey, talking about, being an entrepreneur and what comes with that. So um I think you've covered a lot of things that I wanted to talk about today. So I appreciate that.
Well, Dr. J. Shah, congratulations, I should say, and
Thank
on
you.
all your success so far. CEO and co-founder of Neurava, a company that he founded as a graduate student and continues to carry that passion and really fantastic. So great to meet you today. And so great to be able to hear your story and the story of Neurava and the great work, important work that you guys are doing. Thanks for being our Pathfinder today.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks for the invite. I'm honored to be able to share my story and talk with you more about my journey and our journey with starting Neurava. So yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Tommy.
Thank you for joining us once again, and remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel.